Moral relativism has become the backbone of our society. What is the true definition of tolerance?
The myth of moral neutrality.
Morality deals with principles of rights. Hope is believing in God's promises.
Now, I would like to talk with you on the topic of Pascal's wager. Again, relates to the existence of God. And I'd like to discuss with you Pascal's wager. What is Pascal's wager? Blaise Pascal, from the 17th century, argued the existence of God in terms of a wager. A wager. He based his wager on the fact that a normal, rational, sane being, when given two possible choices, will choose the one with the best chance of obtaining a reward. Makes sense. If I am given two possible options, I will choose the option that will give me the best reward. He basically says that you either believe in God or you don't believe in God. There's no third option. Argument of excluded middle. In other words, you either believe in God or you don't. You can categorize people in these two categories, no other alternative. You either believe in Him or you don't. He also says God either exists or He doesn't exist. He either exists or doesn't exist. And you either believe in Him or you don't. So if you can imagine this matrix, you believe in God, you don't believe in God. God exists, God doesn't exist. So there are four possibilities. If you believe in God and He exists, you will have infinite gain and finite loss. If you believe in God and He exists indeed, then you will have infinite gain. Of course, you will have infinite gain, assuming that you will live a life that is aligned with that belief. Or in other words, your life will be reflective of your belief in God, and you will live as a Christian that illustrates or that manifests his or her faith in their lives. So you'll have infinite gain and finite loss. And if you believe in God, and the other alternative, the other option is that He doesn't exist, then you'll have finite loss. In other words, you would have just wasted your life here on earth, fasting and praying and doing this and that. Then he said the other option is that you don't believe in God. So if you don't believe in God, and if God exists, you will have finite gain and infinite loss. Finite gain, that you lived your life here on earth, doing whatever you please. And you have infinite loss, because now you realize that God exists and you do not believe in Him. And if you don't believe in God, and God does not exist, you'll have finite gain, which basically simply means that you've lived your life here on earth doing whatever you please to do. So you have four possible options: infinite gain plus finite loss, finite gain with infinite loss, or finite gain. Which one of these quadrants, which one of these combination will render the most probable reward? The combination that says infinite gain with finite loss. As a Christian, I may argue that you will have infinite gain in the life to come, and in this life I wouldn't call it a finite loss. With my respect to Blaise Pascal's wager, I would also call it finite gain with infinite gain, because life with Christ, life with God here on earth does not give you a finite loss. This loss that the world may consider as loss, if I have entered into communion and relationship with Christ, this loss that the world may see as loss is actually gain for me. So I'll have infinite gain and finite gain as well here in this world. That quadrant is under the combination of believing in God and the existence or the actual existence of God. For instance, he elaborates and says, if someone says that your house is on fire, it could be or it could not. Your house could be on fire or it could not. Someone is claiming that your house is on fire. The cost of finding out if it is, such as driving a couple of miles or looking to see if it is actually on fire or not, is incredibly small compared to the potential loss of not bothering to look and finding it being burnt down. So what's at stake? That your house will be burnt down. What's the risk you're taking? Pretty huge risk. Well, what must you do to minimize that risk? Well, go see if it is on fire or not, especially if you don't have to travel too far. So it would be utter foolishness for you not to take that risk or not to take that step to look and see if your house is really on fire or not. Because what's at stake is pretty tremendous. And what's at stake? A life in eternity without God. A life, as the Bible states, in hell, and that is eternal separation from God. That's what's at stake. I think it is worthwhile, logically speaking, to see that if God really exists, and if He really claims to be who He is, so that we can make a logical decision about His existence or inexistence. Robert Jastrow said, "For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak as he pulls himself over the final rock. He is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries." Very interesting. In most cases, arguments for or against the existence of God is not really the real issue. And I would like to point out that it's not the lack of evidence that bewilders people, that force people to denounce or reject and deny the existence of God. It is not the lack of evidence, it is the suppression of evidence that people are dealing with. They want to suppress the evidence, not so much seek the evidence, because if you seek, you shall find if you seek from all your heart, and that's what the Bible promises. So the issue is that atheists or anti-theists have decided beforehand that they want to be autonomous, independent, masters of their own destiny. They wanted to, as I mentioned in previous sessions, they wanted to create God in their image, in their likeness. They do not want to conform and submit to a being that tells them what they need to do. Blaise Pascal says about the evidence given to us, he says, God has given us evidence sufficiently clear to convince those with an open heart and mind, yet evidence sufficiently vague so as not to compel those whose hearts and minds are closed. I'll repeat this for you. God has given us evidence sufficiently clear to convince those with an open heart and mind, yet evidence sufficiently vague so as not to compel those whose hearts and minds are closed.